Willow Creek National Bank buzzed with activity on a busy Friday, filled with customers handling transactions and staff managing the flow amid the hum of conversations, ATMs, and keyboards. The scene was as ordinary as it could get, until Daniel Carter walked in. Daniel, a tall, well-built black man in his early 40s, stepped into the lobby, his casual attire standing out among the more polished clientele. Dressed in a dark hoodie and jeans, he exuded an easy confidence that was hard to miss. Daniel's demeanor was relaxed, but his purpose was clear. He was there to finalize a property purchase through his corporate account, a routine transaction for him. Unbeknownst to the other customers, or even the staff, Daniel wasn't just another client. He was the CEO of Carter Enterprises, a leading tech company with a significant presence in the city. His company was a major client of the bank, contributing heavily to its revenues. However, today Daniel wasn't accompanied by assistants or dressed in his usual tailored suits. He had opted for a low-key visit, expecting a smooth and unremarkable transaction. Behind the counter, Karen Adams, a seasoned bank teller in her mid-40s, noticed Daniel's entrance. Karen was known for her efficiency, but also for her sharp judgments. Her eyes lingered on Daniel's hoodie and casual jeans, and a hint of suspicion flickered across her face. To Karen, Daniel didn't look like someone who would be handling a significant financial transaction. She subtly adjusted her posture, bracing herself for what she assumed would be a difficult interaction. As Daniel approached her counter, Karen greeted him with a perfunctory, "How can I help you today?" Her tone was professional, but it lacked warmth. Daniel placed a folder on the counter and smiled. "Good afternoon. I'm here to finalize a property purchase. It's under Carter Enterprises," he explained, his voice calm and measured. Karen's eyes narrowed slightly as she opened the folder and scanned its contents. The name on the documents matched the account records, but something about Daniel's appearance made her pause. She glanced at him, then back at the paperwork, her skepticism growing. "I'll need to see some ID," she said curtly, her fingers tapping on the counter. "Of course," Daniel replied, pulling out his driver's license and sliding it across the counter. Karen studied the ID longer than necessary, her brows furrowed. "This is your account?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Yes, it is," Daniel replied evenly, his calm demeanor unwavering. Karen hesitated, then leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. "I'll need additional verification. This is a substantial transaction, and we can't just take anyone's word for it." Daniel's jaw tightened slightly, but he maintained his composure. "Is this your standard procedure for all customers?" he asked, his tone polite but firm. Karen's lips pursed. To her, Daniel's casual appearance didn't align with the image she had of someone managing a corporate account. And without realizing it, she was about to turn a simple transaction into a much larger incident. Daniel Carter, calm and composed, stood at the counter as Karen Adams scrutinized his documents and ID. Her brow furrowed, her lips tight as if the mere act of verifying his credentials was a personal affront. Despite Daniel's polite demeanor, Karen's suspicion lingered, fueled by her preconceived notions about him. For Karen, appearances mattered, and Daniel's casual hoodie and jeans didn't fit the image she expected of someone claiming to own a corporate account. "I'm going to need additional verification," Karen repeated, setting his driver's license down with a deliberate motion. Her eyes flicked between Daniel and the folder he had handed her. "Do you have anything else that proves you're authorized to make this transaction? A pay stub, or perhaps a letter from your employer?" Daniel tilted his head slightly, his calm expression unchanging, though a hint of frustration flickered in his eyes. "This account is listed under Carter Enterprises, which I own," he said evenly. "The documents in front of you include the necessary authorizations." Karen's lips thinned. "I'm sure you understand, Mr. Carter, that we need to be thorough with transactions like these," she replied, her tone carrying an air of condescension. "It's a lot of money, and we can't take risks." "I appreciate thoroughness," Daniel said, his voice remaining steady, "but I've provided everything required. If there's a specific bank policy I'm not meeting, I'd like to know." Karen didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached for her computer and began typing, glancing at Daniel from time to time as if searching for something to confirm her doubts. Meanwhile, The queue of customers behind Daniel was growing, and a few began shifting uncomfortably, murmuring under their breaths. Daniel ignored them, focusing on Karen with the patience of someone used to navigating bias and unfair treatment. As Karen continued to type, her body language betrayed her increasing discomfort. She wasn't finding anything irregular in the account or the transaction, but she still couldn't shake her doubts. To her, Daniel's presence and demeanor didn't align with the corporate identity of Carter Enterprises, which she knew as a high-profile client of the bank. Finally, she looked up. "I'll need to escalate this," she announced. Her tone was clipped, and she reached for the phone on her desk. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Escalate it?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying a note of incredulity. "To whom, exactly?" Karen hesitated, but before she could answer, Lisa Turner, the bank's branch manager, approached the counter. Lisa, a seasoned professional with years of experience, had been observing the interaction from a distance. While she couldn't hear every word, the tension at Karen's station was evident, and she recognized Daniel immediately. "Is there a problem here?" Lisa asked, her voice calm but authoritative. Karen turned, her expression both relieved and defensive. "Yes, Lisa. This gentleman is trying to process a substantial transaction, but I'm not entirely convinced everything checks out. I was just about to call for verification." Lisa's eyes shifted to Daniel, and a smile broke across her face. "Mr. Carter, it's so good to see you again," she said warmly, extending her hand. Karen froze, her eyes widening as she glanced between Lisa and Daniel. "You know him?" she asked, her voice faltering. Lisa nodded. "Of course I do. Mr. Carter is the CEO of Carter Enterprises, one of our most valued clients." She turned to Daniel, her smile apologetic. "I wasn't aware you'd be visiting us today. Is everything all right?" Daniel accepted Lisa's handshake, his calm demeanor intact. "Good to see you, Lisa," he replied. "I was just here to finalize a property purchase, but it seems there's been some confusion." Lisa's brow furrowed as she looked back at Karen, who appeared increasingly flustered. "Confusion?" Lisa echoed. "Karen, what exactly is the issue?" Karen opened and closed her mouth a few times before managing a response. "I was just being cautious," she said weakly. "It's a significant transaction, and I thought it best to verify everything." Lisa's expression hardened. "Karen, Mr. Carter's identity and credentials are clearly documented in our system. There's no reason for this level of scrutiny." "I didn't know," Karen muttered, her face flushing. "He didn't look." She stopped herself, realizing too late that her words were heading in a dangerous direction. Lisa's gaze sharpened. "Didn't look like what, Karen?" she asked, her tone icy. "Like someone who owns a corporate account?" Karen looked down, her silence speaking volumes. Lisa turned to Daniel, her tone softening. "Mr. Carter, I deeply apologize for this misunderstanding. It's completely unacceptable, and I'll make sure it's addressed immediately." Daniel nodded, his expression calm but serious. "I appreciate that, Lisa, but this isn't just about me. It's about how people like Karen treat others who don't fit their assumptions. I'm not the first person this has happened to, and I won't be the last." Lisa's face flushed slightly, and she nodded. "You're absolutely right," she said, "and I'll make sure this situation is handled appropriately." Turning back to Karen, Lisa's voice grew colder. "Karen, step into my office." "Now." Karen hesitated, looking like she wanted to protest, but a single glance from Lisa silenced her. She nodded stiffly and walked away, leaving Daniel and Lisa alone at the counter. "I hope this won't discourage you from working with us in the future," Lisa said to Daniel. "We value your business, and we'll take immediate action to ensure this doesn't happen again." Daniel offered a small smile. "Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Let's just make sure the lesson sticks." Lisa nodded, determined to set things right. As Daniel stepped away from the counter, the weight of Karen's actions lingered in the air, and Lisa knew that the repercussions were only beginning. Karen Adams followed Lisa Turner into the manager's office, her steps hesitant and her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and unease. She knew the conversation ahead would not be pleasant, but she was still grasping for excuses to justify her behavior. Lisa closed the door behind them, crossing her arms as she leaned against the desk, her expression stern but composed. "Sit," Lisa said, gesturing to the chair in front of her desk. Karen complied, her hands fidgeting in her lap as she avoided her manager's piercing gaze. Lisa didn't waste any time. "Karen," she began, her voice calm but laced with disappointment, "I want you to explain, in your own words, what just happened out there." Karen hesitated, her mind racing. I was just trying to be thorough," she started, her voice defensive. "It was a large transaction, and I thought it was my responsibility to ensure everything was legitimate." Lisa raised an eyebrow, her gaze unwavering. "Thorough?" she repeated, her tone questioning. "Karen, let's be honest. This wasn't about the transaction or the documentation. Mr. Carter provided everything necessary to verify his identity. What exactly made you doubt him?" Karen faltered, her cheeks flushing. "Well, it's just, he didn't seem like the type to." She stopped abruptly, realizing how her words sounded. Lisa leaned forward, her voice growing colder. "Didn't seem like the type to what, Karen? Own a corporate account? Manage a successful business? What exactly about Mr. Carter made you suspicious?" Karen opened her mouth, then closed it, her silence speaking volumes. Lisa let the silence stretch for a moment before continuing. "Let me make this very clear," Lisa said, her voice firm. "You judged Mr. Carter not on the documents he provided or the account details in our system, but on your assumptions about him, his appearance, his clothing, and perhaps even his race." Karen's eyes widened, and she quickly shook her head. No, that's not what I—" "Stop," Lisa interrupted, holding up a hand. "You need to take responsibility for your actions. Your behavior wasn't just unprofessional, it was discriminatory. Mr. Carter is one of our most valued clients. His company generates a substantial portion of this branch's revenue. Yet you treated him as though he were a criminal trying to scam the bank." Karen looked down, unable to meet Lisa's eyes. The weight of her manager's words began to sink in, but she still clung to her excuses. "I didn't know who he was," she mumbled. "If I had known—" Lisa cut her off sharply. "It doesn't matter if you knew who he was. That's the entire point, Karen. Every customer who walks into this bank deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of their appearance or how much money they have. Your job is to serve our clients, not to judge them." The room fell silent, the gravity of Lisa's words hanging in the air. Karen shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her mind racing for a way to salvage the situation. But Lisa wasn't done. "This isn't the first time I've had complaints about your attitude," Lisa continued, her tone growing colder. "You've developed a reputation among some of the staff and customers for being difficult, especially with people who don't fit the mold, as you seem to define it." Karen looked up, her eyes wide with shock. "That's not fair," she protested weakly. "I've always done my job." "Your job," Lisa interrupted, "is to treat every customer with professionalism and respect. You failed to do that today, and the consequences of your actions go beyond this single incident. Do you realize the damage this could have caused if Mr. Carter had chosen to take his business elsewhere? We're talking about millions of dollars in revenue and a major stain on this branch's reputation." Karen opened her mouth to speak, but found herself at a loss for words. The severity of the situation was becoming painfully clear, and her earlier confidence had crumbled. Lisa leaned back, crossing her arms. "I've already spoken with corporate about this incident," she said. "After reviewing what happened, I've made the decision to terminate your employment, effective immediately." Karen's jaw dropped, and she stared at Lisa in stunned silence. "Terminate?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're firing me?" "Yes," Lisa said firmly. "Your actions today were unacceptable, and they reflect poorly on this branch and on the bank as a whole. We cannot and will not tolerate discriminatory behavior, whether it's intentional or not." Karen's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the arms of her chair. I didn't mean to." Lisa cut her off again. "Intent doesn't matter, Karen. What matters is the impact of your actions. Mr. Carter deserved better, and so does every customer who walks through our doors." The room fell silent again, and Karen could feel tears welling up in her eyes. She had worked at the bank for years, and now it was all slipping away because of one mistake. Or rather, a series of mistakes born from unchecked biases. Lisa stood, signaling that the conversation was over. "You can gather your things and leave by the end of the day," she said, her voice softer but still firm. "I hope this serves as a wake-up call for you, Karen. It's never too late to learn and grow, but you need to take responsibility for your behavior." Karen nodded numbly, unable to muster a response. She stood and left the office, her mind a whirlwind of regret and anger. Anger at herself, at the situation, and at the harsh truth Lisa had laid bare. As the door closed behind her, Lisa let out a long sigh. She didn't enjoy firing people, but she knew this was necessary. Karen's actions had been inexcusable, and Lisa was determined to ensure that the branch upheld the bank's values of respect and professionalism moving forward. There was still much work to do, but this was a step in the right direction. While Karen left Lisa's office in stunned silence, Daniel Carter had settled into a private meeting room at the bank. His transaction, though temporarily delayed, was now being expedited by another employee who had been instructed by Lisa to ensure everything went smoothly. Sitting at the polished mahogany table, Daniel flipped through some documents, his demeanor calm but reflective. The events of the day had left a sour taste in his mouth, but this wasn't an unfamiliar experience for him. A soft knock on the door broke his thoughts. Lisa Turner entered, her expression a mixture of professionalism and genuine regret. She carried a folder in her hand and gestured to the chair across from him. "Mr. Carter, thank you for your patience," she said as she sat down. "I wanted to speak with you personally." Daniel set the papers aside, folding his hands on the table. "I appreciate that, Lisa," he replied. His tone was measured, but carried an undercurrent of disappointment. "I assume the issue with Karen has been addressed?" Lisa nodded. "Yes, it has. I want to start by offering my sincerest apologies for what happened. Karen's behavior was completely unprofessional and goes against everything this bank stands for. I've already made the decision to terminate her employment." Daniel raised an eyebrow but said nothing, allowing her to continue. Lisa sighed, her gaze meeting his directly. "Mr. Carter, I know an apology isn't enough, but I want to assure you that this incident has prompted immediate action. Discrimination and bias have no place here, and I'm committed to making changes to ensure that all customers are treated with the respect they deserve." Daniel leaned back slightly in his chair, his expression contemplative. "I appreciate your quick response, Lisa," he said, "but this isn't just about me. What happened today is part of a larger issue. How many other customers have faced the same treatment, but without the position or resources to challenge it?" Lisa nodded, his words striking a chord. "You're absolutely right," she admitted. "This incident is a wake-up call for all of us. We've already begun plans to implement mandatory staff training on bias awareness and professionalism. I'll also be reviewing our customer service protocols to ensure that situations like this are handled appropriately moving forward." Daniel studied her for a moment before responding. "That's a start," he said, "but policies and training only go so far. What matters is creating a culture where respect and fairness are non-negotiable, no matter who walks through those doors." Lisa nodded again, her respect for Daniel growing. "That's exactly what we're aiming for," she said. "I'll be overseeing these changes personally, and I'd value any input you might have." Daniel offered a small smile. "I'd be happy to help where I can. But for now, I just want to make sure this transaction is completed without further issues." Lisa's professionalism took over as she handed him the folder. "Everything is in order now," she assured him. "Your transaction has been finalized, and the funds have been transferred to the appropriate account. If there's anything else you need, please don't hesitate to let me know." "Thank you, Lisa," Daniel said, his tone warmer now. "I appreciate your efforts to address this quickly and thoroughly. Let's hope the changes you're implementing make a difference." As Lisa stood to leave, she hesitated for a moment, then turned back to him. "Mr. Carter, if I may ask, why didn't you escalate this earlier?" "You had every right to." Daniel's smile was faint but knowing. "Because I wanted to see how it would play out," he said. "Sometimes, it's more telling to see how people act when they don't know who you are." Lisa nodded, understanding his reasoning. "Well, I hope we've made it clear where we stand now. And again, I'm deeply sorry for how you were treated." With that, Lisa left the room, leaving Daniel to reflect on the day's events. While he appreciated the bank's swift response, he knew this was just the beginning. Real change, he understood, would take time and consistent effort. As he gathered his belongings and prepared to leave, Daniel couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and hope. While the incident was a reminder of the biases he still faced, the steps being taken to address them were a small but meaningful step forward. In the days following the incident with Daniel Carter, Willow Creek National Bank began the process of turning a difficult moment into an opportunity for growth. Lisa Turner, the branch manager, knew that addressing what had happened wasn't just about firing Karen. It was about ensuring that the rest of the staff learned from the situation and understood the values the bank stood for. The first step was introducing mandatory training sessions for all employees. These sessions focused on topics like bias awareness, professionalism, and customer respect. Lisa worked closely with the corporate office to bring in expert trainers who could provide real-world examples and practical strategies for dealing with unconscious bias. The goal was to help the staff recognize their own assumptions and learn how to treat all customers with fairness and dignity, regardless of their appearance or background. At the same time, Lisa spearheaded the creation of a customer respect policy, a visible reminder of the bank's commitment to professionalism. The policy read, "At Willow Creek National Bank, we value every customer. Respect, fairness, and professionalism are the cornerstones of our service. We are committed to providing an inclusive and welcoming environment for all." These signs were prominently displayed in the lobby, at each teller station, and in employee-only areas as a constant reminder of the bank's values. During the first training session, Lisa addressed the staff directly. "What happened last week was unacceptable," she said, her tone firm but encouraging. "But it's also a chance for us to grow as a team. We can't let our personal assumptions cloud our judgment. Every customer deserves our respect and professionalism, and it's our responsibility to make this bank a place where everyone feels welcome." The staff responded with a mix of curiosity and determination. Many of them, including Mike, a younger teller, and Samantha, a senior employee, acknowledged that they hadn't thought much about how biases could affect their behavior. The training sessions sparked important conversations and helped create a more open, reflective environment. By the end of the week, the changes were already visible. Employees seemed more engaged, more aware of how they interacted with customers. Lisa felt a cautious optimism as she saw her team begin to internalize the lessons. It wasn't just about avoiding future mistakes. It was about building a culture where respect was the default. A month after the incident that spurred significant changes at Willow Creek National Bank, Daniel Carter decided to visit the branch again. This time, his purpose was more observational than transactional. He wanted to see if the promises of improvement and the newly implemented policies had made a genuine impact. As Daniel stepped into the bank's lobby, he immediately noticed a difference. The atmosphere felt lighter, and the staff appeared more welcoming. Gone were the wary glances and guarded expressions he had encountered during his previous visit. Instead, there were warm smiles and polite greetings. At the entrance, a large sign displayed the customer respect policy with its clear message about fairness and professionalism. It was a subtle but significant change, and Daniel felt a flicker of hope. He made his way to the counter, where Mike, one of the younger tellers, greeted him with a genuine smile. "Good afternoon, Mr. Carter. How can I assist you today?" Mike's tone was friendly and respectful, a marked contrast to the treatment Daniel had experienced a month prior. "I'm just here to check in," Daniel replied, smiling slightly. "No transaction today." Mike nodded, unfazed. "Well, if there's anything you need, feel free to let me know." Satisfied, Daniel took a seat in the waiting area to observe the interactions around him. He noticed the tellers engaging with customers of all kinds, elderly patrons, families, and young professionals, with the same level of care and attentiveness. There was no sign of the judgmental or dismissive attitudes that had characterized Karen's behavior. As Daniel watched, Lisa Turner, the branch manager, spotted him from across the room and approached with a warm smile. "Mr. Carter, it's so good to see you again," she said, extending her hand. "Good to see you too, Lisa," Daniel replied, shaking her hand. "I thought I'd stop by and see how things are going." Lisa's smile widened. "I think you'll be pleased." The training sessions were a success, and the new policy has been well received by both the staff and our customers. There's been a noticeable shift in how our team approaches their work. Daniel nodded, glancing around the room. I can see that. It's good to know the message is getting through. Lisa hesitated, then added, your feedback and the way you handled everything were instrumental in helping us make these changes. I wanted to thank you for your patience and for giving us the chance to improve. Daniel offered a small smile. Change takes time, but it seems like you're on the right track. It's good to see a commitment to professionalism and respect in action. As the two continued to talk, Samantha, one of the senior employees, walked by and gave Daniel a nod of acknowledgement. The staff had clearly been made aware of his importance, but more importantly, they were treating every customer with the same level of respect and care. When Daniel left the bank that day, he felt a sense of closure. The incident that had once been a source of frustration had now become a catalyst for positive change. Though there was still work to be done, Daniel was hopeful that the lessons learned would continue to shape the bank's future for the better. Far from the bustling halls of Willow Creek National Bank, Karen Adams sat at her kitchen table, staring blankly at the stack of bills in front of her. A month had passed since her termination, but the weight of that day still clung to her like a heavy fog. The loss of her job, her steady income, and the sense of purpose it brought was a constant reminder of the consequences of her actions. Karen's initial reaction had been anger. She blamed Lisa, the bank, and even Daniel for what had happened. But as the days turned into weeks, her bitterness began to give way to introspection. With nothing but time on her hands, Karen started to replay the events in her mind, scrutinizing each moment and her role in them. She remembered Daniel's calm demeanor, the way he had remained composed even as she questioned his legitimacy. She remembered the disappointment in Lisa's voice when she explained why Karen's behavior was unacceptable. But most of all, she remembered the look on Daniel's face, a quiet, restrained disbelief that spoke volumes about the indignities he must have faced before. Karen had never thought of herself as prejudiced. She had convinced herself that she treated everyone the same, but Daniel's visit had exposed a harsh truth about her own biases. She realized that her actions had been shaped by assumptions she hadn't even been fully aware of, and those assumptions had cost her everything. As she sat in silence, Karen reached for a notepad and began jotting down her thoughts. She didn't know exactly why she was writing, but the act felt cathartic. She wrote about her regrets, about the lessons she had learned too late, and about her determination to be better. Karen knew she couldn't undo the past, but she also knew she couldn't let the experience go to waste. Somewhere deep down, she hoped that this hard lesson would serve as a turning point, not just for her career, but for her understanding of others and herself. For now, all she could do was learn and try to move forward. The changes at Willow Creek National Bank continued to take root, shaping a new culture of respect and professionalism. Employees embraced the lessons from the training sessions, their interactions reflecting an awareness of the values the bank now championed. Customers began to notice the difference, commenting on the welcoming atmosphere and improved service. Daniel Carter's role in sparking this transformation wasn't forgotten. His patience and refusal to escalate the incident prematurely had allowed the bank to confront its flaws and implement lasting change. His decision to return and observe the improvements only reinforced the importance of holding institutions accountable while giving them the opportunity to grow. Lisa Turner, the branch manager, remained at the forefront of these changes. She regularly met with her staff to discuss their progress and to share feedback from customers. Her leadership became a model for other branches in the network, proving that even difficult situations could lead to positive outcomes when handled with accountability and a commitment to fairness. As for Daniel, his experience became a symbol of perseverance in the face of prejudice. For him, the bank's transformation was a reminder that progress, though slow, was possible when individuals and organizations committed themselves to doing better. It wasn't just about one incident, it was about changing the way people think, act, and treat each other. A few months after the incident, Willow Creek National Bank had become a shining example of how a difficult situation could lead to meaningful change. The staff's training sessions, combined with the clear implementation of the customer respect policy, created an environment where every individual, regardless of their appearance, background, or social standing, felt welcome. Daniel Carter, though satisfied with the progress he observed during his second visit, remained mindful of the larger issues at play. To him, the incident was more than a personal grievance. It was a reflection of the biases that still permeated many institutions. He chose to remain engaged with the bank, providing occasional feedback to Lisa Turner and the corporate office. His goal wasn't to be an overseer, but to ensure that the changes made were not temporary gestures, but permanent steps toward progress. Lisa, for her part, took Daniel's involvement seriously. The staff had grown to respect her leadership, particularly as she consistently reinforced the importance of respect and fairness in daily interactions. She organized quarterly reviews to evaluate how well the new policies were being followed and encouraged employees to share their thoughts and experiences. This open dialogue created a sense of collective accountability, where the staff felt invested in maintaining the bank's welcoming atmosphere. Meanwhile, Daniel's experience resonated beyond the walls of the branch. His quiet perseverance in the face of discrimination inspired conversations in the community about the importance of judging individuals by their character rather than their appearance. Local media, learning of the bank's transformation, highlighted the story as an example of how organizations could address and overcome their internal biases. Karen Adams, though no longer part of the bank, played her own role in the story's ripple effect. While her termination had been a difficult consequence, it prompted her to reflect deeply on her assumptions and biases. Over time, she took steps to educate herself and sought opportunities to rebuild her professional life, determined to do better in the future. For Daniel, the incident and its aftermath served as a reminder of the power of patience and perseverance. While systemic change was never easy or immediate, it was possible when individuals demanded accountability and organizations committed themselves to growth. In the end, the lesson was clear. Respect and professionalism aren't just policies. They are choices that can transform how people live and work together. Thanks for being with us until the end. If you like this story, please subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next video.